My brothers and sisters in D&D, it's time for a negative video. I'm here with the Loot Crate D&D shirt. Oh my god, I bought this thing as a joke. I don't even want to wear this. Ooh, this is a nice shirt. Anywho, let's talk about some negativity. In 2024, people are still giving the advice to go to your local game store to start out with D&D. I moved way back in 2016, and I had some issues finding a game using that advice. And I thought, hey, maybe I'm the problem. Because when you have all these weird issues that you keep on running into, maybe the problem isn't everybody else, maybe it's you. Maybe the issue is I'm the weirdo loser that nobody wants to play D&D. But no, that's not actually what happened. You see, I realized when I'm online, people are literally trying to pay me money for me to run games with me. Everybody seems to love my games online. I play with my professional friends. I play with random internet people. I play with local people online, and it's great.
Note from Caleb, the editor, I realize that when I run games in person at the local public library, I don't have any issues, but also that's a situation where I have a lot of control over what happens, and I think I do a much better job explaining what kind of game I want to run and whatnot. So I haven't had any issues with that yet, but I've run like 3 games recently with no issues at all. So just in case you think I'm a weirdo that can only do this online, that's not the case. That's not the case, Sean.
The issue always seems to crop up when I try to go to my friendly local game store. Finally tonight at midnight, I'm filming this at midnight on a Saturday. I've read yet another Reddit post because I have a toxic relationship with that site. It's so terrible I can't stop. Crit Crab, if you're listening to this, please help me out. I need somebody to pull me away from that toxic, awful site. Anywho, so yet another tale of woe, and let's get into that, shall we?
So I've decided not to go into granular detail with this because I think this is going to be like really familiar to anybody who's actually played a game in a game store recently. Finally got to play in person. It was awful. Tried to cast Speak with Animals, and the DM immediately said, fuck you. No animal handling. Just fuck you. And a sad dog... Okay, this is the real point in this one, I think. A sad dog came up to us. I go to ritual cast Speak with Animals, but was yelled down by another player because there was no time. So we just walked into a tundra following a strange dog. This might seem completely, nonsensical, but this is actually a result of like this person being kowtowed into this bizarre ideals of how this DM wants to run their game. So they won't spend 10 minutes of in-game time and probably a minute and a half of actual conversation to figure out what's going on with his dog, even though the dog is the emphasis of like what the party's doing next. They're just like, they've been trained by the DM. It's just like, no, we can't do that. We have to go to the next thing. Just follow the next thing. And of course, he finished it off by focusing down on this person during the first round of combat. Another mark of an amazing DM who just wants to not welcome somebody new at their table. Another one, the GM said, other D&D races are just humans with funny hats. So he had a restriction, this DM did, on only playing humans. He explained that he found it immersion breaking for players to play other races because they didn't really understand that race. You're just a human with a funny hat, or an elf hat, or a gnome hat. You don't understand the lore and culture of a non-human race because you're a human in real life. Reminding everybody, by the way, this is just all fake fantasy stuff. Not even like really in-depth fantasy. Like D&D fantasy, I hate to break it to you, it ain't that deep, chief. Like if you want to get into the weeds with the Forgotten Realms, a lot of that stuff is very interesting and deep. There's a lot of deep stuff in D&D, but at the end of the day, a lot of the general concepts such as playing an elf, that's not like super deep and involved. It's literally what people are doing for fun. It's crazy. Imagine if you tried to do this sort of logic with anything that's happening at this fantasy role-playing table where you're like, oh, you don't know what it's like to be a fighter because you're not a martially trained person who understands all these medieval weapons and stuff. And let me tell you, even if you are a person who trains a lot with medieval weapons and stuff, chances are you still don't have a concept of what makes a fun tabletop game experience. Please, of course, refer to my earlier video. And of course, because this is Reddit, there's literally people on there saying, well, actually, he's right. Remember that the vast majority of upvoted stuff is reasonable responses, but there are so many people, they'll basically say, oh, this GM was right in some way, but then they'll also bookend that with something that most people would like really agree with. And because people are stupid on Reddit, they'll just upvote that answer, even though the answer is wrong. These are fantasy concepts that were imagined up by a human. So yes, obviously anyone can play anything that they like in terms of a non-human creature. This is just crazy. But of course, Reddit has to somehow agree with this and then bookend it with some positive stuff. So idiots upvote it. If this argumentation was correct in any way, then nobody in D&D could possibly be a magic user. Only Olympic athletes could play D&D because the vast majority of characters who have higher stats would literally have to be training at the level of an Olympic athlete. And that's, let me tell you, buddy, that ain't any of us. There's very few people, dude. So I think this might have been some sort of meme or discussion that happened online where people are like complaining about new players, how they... Oh, this is just so dumb. I don't quite understand this. Like, it's you can literally have a group where different people are doing different things and everybody can be having a fun time. One player can be solely focusing on like mechanical stuff and barely doing any role playing, and then another person could be like super into role playing and not relying heavily on mechanics. They can be at the same table, everything could be happening good, but again, that really is boy, it's so depressing that somebody would just see a conversation like this online and like take that to the real world that's not Reddit and just like ruin somebody's game by saying, you actually can't play a dwarf because you don't know what being a dwarf is. And it's just like, you actually can't play an elf because you don't know what being an elf is, and it's impossible for you to play an elf because you just don't understand. Was that like some sort of weird joke? And then there was just no punchline because he just didn't. That was just an actual rule he put into the game. Ooh! Ooh! I guarantee that dude was a Redditor. I guarantee that dude was a Redditor. I guarantee that dude just like thought he was being a fucking... I guarantee that dude thought he was being an absolute genius by just, you know, and that's the thing too. All of these people who do this weird shit and screw up and drive people away from the table, they all think that they are the greatest thing to happen to tabletop games. Every single one of them thinks that they are one of the greatest dungeon masters who has ever walked the planet. It is crazy. And thus they will never change, and thus we will head into this next part of the conversation of why they just sort of keep on circulating around the game stores and just continue to be toxic losers, which I'll rant about next.
So I just brought up a bunch of examples of other people having horrible problems with finding D&D in physical game stores. And hey, I don't want to brag. I'm a good DM. I'm a damn good DM. And I've run games for a vast majority of people. Young people, random people, at conventions, at comic book stores, at gaming stores, at public libraries. I've run games pretty much everywhere you could in public. At the Barnes & Noble, at the bar place where it's the board game bar place. I've run games there. And you know what? Everybody always wants to come back for more with my games. But when I first moved and I tried to find a game, that was a nightmare. The guy did not know how to run D&D, and he had a whole booklet, a thick Bible of his amazing story that he wanted to tell. But he didn't know how to run 5e. So literally, as a level 1 character, I was being chased around by an Ettercap. Now, this is when I really didn't know 5e that much. I didn't know how powerful an Ettercap was, but I just sort of understood by what was happening I wouldn't be able to take this thing alone. So I ran away, and he's like, oh, what's going on? Why are you running away? And I'm like, it's... you have weapons for your character, right? And it's just like, dude, like, I'm doing, like, the only thing to keep my character alive. You're having a rogue go one-on-one with an Ettercap. And it's clearly, like, way too powerful for me. I found out later just how powerful an Ettercap in 5e was, by the way. And I was obviously correct. But yeah, so that dude was terrible. Everybody quit that game. And you would think a guy like that would figure out, oh, I had this huge opportunity and everybody quit and nobody wanted to play in my game anymore. Maybe I need to improve. No. Years later, that dude was still doing the same shit. And guess what else? He's literally the paid DM for this area. He is trying to get people to pay him a professional wage to run his awful dog shit campaign that sucks and nobody wanted to play with when he was doing it for free. And certainly, that isn't the only DM I had an issue with when I first moved. Another one that I met just didn't show up. And I also had issues with problem players too. And again, I want to stress this isn't just me. Literally, I had to give the heads up on the guy who was using the location that I had previously went to. And I gave him the heads up about this problem guy. And literally, I checked up on that group ahead of time. And the guy's like, great, we got a bunch of people and we're all set. So thanks, everybody. We got enough people from our game. So we're going to go off and do our game now. And everybody in that short-lived thread, and I wish I would have everybody was complaining about that one dude. And I knew exactly it was that one dude because he was doing all the annoying stuff that he had done in my game and ruined my game. Oh, it was so horrible. And that's what happens. The good players and the good DM will find each other and they will run away from that local game store. They will run. And yep, for them, that's actually the best solution. It leaves pretty much everyone else in the lurch. And there's really two things that come out of that. Either they make themselves such an insular group that they're actually a financial detriment to the local game store. This happened here as well, where there was literally a group where they set it up, where everybody had their table, everybody had their DM, and they really didn't let anybody else into that system. They said that they wanted new DMs, but when I signed up to be a DM, I quickly realized, like, no one signed up for my game. Because, like, why would they? Everyone was still running their game. So you still had your insular DMs and players. There weren't any new players, there weren't any new DMs. From what I was told, I assumed there'd be a ton of players looking for a new DM. That's not the case. I think what happened is literally they were just like, it's the same people showing up every single week, no new people are showing up. So I think the store owners were trying to have a conversation with the guy and be like, hey, we really need to get some new people in here. It's just you guys literally every single week not buying anything, not being new customers, not needing any new books. What's going on? So I think they just did a half-hearted effort of reaching out for DMs, but they didn't have a system in place. Now, getting players was never an issue with me because I knew how to use sites like meetup.com and other sites to draw people in, because you can go to Facebook sites where there's different fan groups and stuff like that for your local area. Meetup.com is my main one. Meetup is the big one where I could pull a bunch of players from, because there's definitely going to be good groups that are moderated and they kick people out that are jerks. It's hilarious that a site like meetup.com, which is, pretty much organized by like just a regular person, they'll be more proactive of cleaning up their local area than a lot of local game stores. Because a lot of local game stores, man, they get stuck in that mindset of I just need to keep people in my store to buy new cards. And they don't understand the concept of creating a good space. Since I've lived here, I've literally created dozens of brand new DMs who have all gone out and all bought new books and new stuff and then created their own games and stuff. Which I think that's actually the mark of a good DM. A good DM is somebody who creates such an interest in the game that like a vampire, he will spread his DM disease to all the unsuspecting new players, who then will go off and run their own games for their own players, and it spreads. That's just something to think about. Is there an easy solution to this? Well, you can just kind of forget the easy advice of just go to your local friendly game store. Maybe if you're very lucky, then there will be a gaming group that will have actually done some organizing there. I've only been like a part of literally one game store in this area that's done things properly, and the rest of them are pretty trash, I gotta say, and they don't solve the issue of actually creating this issue. I literally went to a local comic book store who literally like had this like hour-long meeting with pizza and stuff talking about, well, how do we do the new D&D? We want to set up D&D stuff, and it's just like, I'm ready to go. Just let me do it. And I went to another place where like they were looking for people to set up games, and I said, hey, I'm ready to go. Just let me set it up. I'll even bring players there, because at that point I kind of realized, well, maybe the issue is I just need to bring in my own players, which I could easily do, again, through sites like Meetup. And they just forgot to give me a table. It was awful. And so it really depends on how interested your local store is of setting up something good. And hilariously enough, you hear these horror stories about Adventure League. And oh my god, I was part of one of those too, where somebody literally was like, somebody clearly had read ahead about the adventure, and it was just a nightmare. Because they just weren't smart enough to be able to like, they weren't smart enough to be able to play in the game in a way that made sense. So they were just basically spoiling the entire adventure, and it was so obvious and just very uncomfortable. It was just so, it was so weird. That was one of the most bizarre experiences ever, and like, I honestly never went back to Adventure League after that. So here's the thing, these toxic DMs, these terrible players, they're never going to fall into the system that kind of naturally progresses with other people. They're not going to find players in a DM and then go off and do their own thing. That's for other people. So what happens to all these awful people that nobody wants to play in? They're going to stay in the systems like Adventures League, and they're going to stay in the local game store because the local game store has a financial motive not to kick these people out. Because unfortunately most local game store owners, apparently in this area, again, I had much better luck in northern New York, but all the local game store owners save one. The stores just aren't good at coming up with a good environment for new players to come in and have a good experience, because they're just too short-sighted, and they just want to get that money from the cards, and they don't really care about anything else in regards to board games, honestly. It's depressing, certainly. What happened during Free RPG Day this year certainly bears that out. God! Final advice, get good if you're a DM of finding a way to get everybody's contact information so you can separate the good people from the bad, and it will be very obvious who is interested in just having a good time playing D&D and who is a toxic human being who just wants to be cruel to other human beings because they are socially dysfunctional. And that's a harsh thing to say, but you gotta, I think most people who are DMs are gonna very easily separate those two groups up. And so you need everybody's contact information so you can get in contact with the right people and organize your own game somewhere else. And that might seem mean to your friendly local game store, but if you're having this problem, then the friendly local game store really values their short-term profits above being an actual place where people can play board games in a fun and productive way. Number 2, get used to what is the mainstream contact online. Get used to like what is the main website people in the area use. Meetup.com in my current city is the big site that pretty much everybody uses. Generally speaking, you'll be able to figure out sometimes local game groups will use Discord. I know there's the One Good Game Store has a very excellent Discord, which again, I can't help but see the connections of somebody who's willing to actually put the work into running a good Discord, which is not an easy task, mind you, and somebody who's putting the effort in and making it a welcoming space for new players or people that are just new to the general hobby of tabletop. So there is going to be some sort of website or service that seems to be more popular in your city and others, and you're just going to have to do the legwork to figure that out. Sometimes it's best to see if there's any local gaming groups and figure out what websites they like to use, even if it's something that's not directly related to D&D, even if it's just a general tabletop group that doesn't do D&D. Finding out what they use for their social media or their websites or their organization, sometimes that will help you find other groups that are interested in doing D&D stuff. The Facebook groups used to be more popular in Northern New York. Again, the tabletop group used that. They weren't interested in doing D&D, but there was another group that was interested in tabletop RPGs that also used Facebook groups in that same town. So you just have to do your own legwork. Whether you're a player or whether you're a DM, you really have to have respect for yourself and respect for your time. And there's a lot of people out there that will have zero respect for you and zero respect for your time, and they won't feel bad about wasting your time, and they won't feel bad about ruining everybody's game. And there might be a lot of reasons about that, and chances are you're not going to be able to do anything about that. So you just need to be able to recognize those people and just avoid them. And if possible, very politely say that, hey, there's this person who seems like they have some very negative tendencies, and you need to tell other people who run games. And yeah, and hey, you might be the odd person out, but chances are if somebody is that bad that they're ruining games and people are still allowing them to hang out, either they don't have a strong organization, or maybe that's just a friend group that kind of consolidated in that one game store area, and you just need to abandon ship and find your players someplace else. And heck, guys, that's what I did, and I'm much happier nowadays doing that. I play with professional friends. I play with people that are from my profession, and I learned a lot, and it was very fun, and I think it really helped me out. Because a lot of the times I do run games in public libraries and stuff. I run games for strangers a lot. And, you know, I think I run games that are much different than everybody else. But here's the secret. You might have to rely on your current group of friends and family. And you might have to just say, they might be a little bit annoyed, but it still might be fun to run a quick game with your friends and family if you have any. Now, for me, I didn't have any. I had friends back in Northern New York. I had a lot of acquaintances back in Northern New York. But when I moved, I had none of those. I didn't have any family, I didn't have any friends, and it was tough. And I had to put the legwork in, and I had to learn some harsh lessons. And all the time, everyone was telling me, oh, don't worry, you can just go to your friendly local game store and get started with D&D there. No. That was not an easy start to running or playing D&D in a new city as an adult. It just wasn't. So, like I said, share your tips about how you can find D&D games and avoid the pitfalls that are becoming very common in your friendly local game store with some of the toxic, horrible people that there's so many fun stories about online. And let me know in the comments below if you want me to talk about some of my negative situations that I touched on before. Boy, I got a lot of stories. I'm not sure if anybody wants to hear them, but there's some doozies. All right, thanks for listening.
It tastes like Pete. Oh, it tastes like Pete. Oh, it tastes like shit. Oh, it must taste like shit then. Oh, it must like...
Yeah, I was describing how a potion tasted, and I said it tasted peaty. And the guy says,
oh, it tastes like shit then.
You know, fuck you, dude. You're just a fucking prick. And everybody fucking said you were a prick. You fucking moron.